And I believe next on the program is our program. Harvey, are you introducing our program today?
Yes.
You better get members before you hear my talk.
I don't believe it. Well, it is a delight here to first see so many people here. This is the largest number of people we have ever had. And Bill has put a lot of time into this program. And I would like to say that his program will be on growing up in Anniston. He was educated first at Miss Andrews Kindergarten, as you all know. He went to Woodstock School, then Johnson Junior High School, the McCallie School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, McCallie, Vanderbilt University in History, Latin American Studies. Postgraduate studies were at the University of Alabama. Then London Business School. That's interesting. In London, 1985. His resume has so many things, and I know you'll look forward to all of it. He's going to let you know. If your name was Bill Acker, you had lots of advantages and adventures in Anniston. There is nothing here, no evidence at all to say that he got into any trouble throughout that. It was all good and success. Let's give a warm welcome to Bill Acker.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed my talk, and I hope to look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. I want to say two things. I'm flattered that you're here, and I know most of you, the Anniston people, but there are three people that came kicking and screaming and did not want to come. One is from Moscow. She came over here and voted with us 2 weeks ago. Another is from Kathmandu, Nepal. That's a long way to come to hear me talk. And the third one is Tom Ritchie, the husband of Margaret Crabtree. And he is my lawyer, and he reluctantly came over here. And my daddy told me when I was growing up, his part of growing up in Anniston, he said, son, don't ever get a lawyer or an accountant from Anniston, because eventually they'll get drunk and they'll go over to the country club and they'll tell all your business. I can rely on Tom Ritchie to not do that. As you well know, we have no control over when we were born, where we were born, and to whom we were born. But we do have, as we grow older, a little control over our lives. And this story of Anniston, I think, touches on those points. The history of Anniston really can be divided into 4 categories: social, racial, industrial, and historical. I'm going to focus today on the social part, and there are many people, a lot in this room, who contributed to this, and I was very flattered that they've shown the interest in what I'm trying to do. And only the names have been changed to protect the guilty. I'm going to quote some people here, and I was told earlier today, don't read all that stuff, and I'm not going to read it all, but I am going to. There are a couple of quotes from some people, 2 of whom I know and 1 of whom I do not know. But it's just a remarkable story. And if I get emotional, that's just me. The first one says, I remember Anniston as a place filled with wonderful, God-fearing people who worked hard, respected one another, were dedicated to their families and friends, and their friends' well-being. And it was a rare treasure then and still is today. Our next-door neighbors, when we were small, brought waffles to us on Sunday morning. And the man across the street owned a filling station. And when our car would run out of gas, he would bring us gasoline. And so many parents helped out each other by driving their neighbors' children to school, or in some cases they even walked them to school. And Fort McClellan and Bynum brought a completely different set of people here. They were from other parts of the country. They had much broader perspectives perhaps than we did. And it was interesting and challenging for them, but they all, the ones I know who were here for a while, became an integral part of our community. Biggest issue they had was the distance they had from downtown. Now I'm going to tell you 3 stories, and I'm going to have to read these because I don't want to mess them up. First is from a poor black girl who lived at the corner of 15th and Moore Avenue. Those of you not here, it's just several blocks from here. There's so many. We were dirt poor, but we did not know it. Everyone around us was in the same financial situation. It was all relative, and my best friend Shirley and I had a great time. Behind us on 14th Street, there were black families. We, my brother, my friend Shirley, and me, played with several black people every day. We were the best of friends. We had no dance studios, no drive-in restaurants, no anything except playing outside and having the time of our lives. We did not own a car. We walked or rode the bus. We had a very large chinaberry tree in our yard. We would climb it and have chinaberry fights. Boy, did those hurt when you were hit by a chinaberry. My dad knew most of the bus drivers. The West 15th Street run stopped in front of our house. Dad arranged for Shirley and me to ride to Oxford Lake and back, just Shirley and me. And we would share our lunches that our mothers had made with the driver. We were 5 years old. The bus driver would watch over us and bring us back home safely. This is always, you get so emotionally involved in these things. I'm sorry I do, but that's just me, I guess. The Southern Railroad tracks ran under the 10th Street Viaduct toward Birmingham. The remnants of the old viaduct were dumped alongside. There were very large chunks of concrete. The less savory characters of Anniston would hang out there. They were referred to as the rum hounds because they drank bay rum hair tonic. My brothers and I would take our BB guns and we'd go down there and play war, hiding and shooting at one another, and occasionally we'd hit a rum hound, and boy did they get mad. My mom loved to dance. My dad normally didn't. She would take me by the hand and we would walk to Zen Park on Friday afternoons. We'd go to the outdoor basketball court and they would have dances. The music was played on loudspeakers and a record player was under the big covered pavilion. All of the kids would climb up the hill by the Anniston Inn and roll over and over and over all the way to the bottom. Mom and I would walk to town from Moore Avenue every Saturday. We stayed all day. Gosh, when I think about those wonderful trips. And the next story is from a girl that I went to school with, white, middle class. She lived at the corner of 11th and Quintard. She says, I remember many times going into the median park in front of my house to wave to the soldiers after truck after truck after truck. Drove the soldiers to Fort McClellan. Telephones had an operator. We had no dial, we had no push button. Our number was 1539. Then there were rotary phones, and it became Adams 61539. Telephone calls were always short. Local and residential service was generally via a party line. 2, 4, 6, even 8 houses would be on the same party line, with the distinction between your telephone number being the letter that followed your number. Long distance calling was quite expensive. First we had to wait until after 8 p.m. And then we'd check the time with the library to make sure, with the operator to make sure we were not early. Then we would set an egg timer, a 3-minute egg timer, and talk because your calls could not exceed 3 minutes. The calls were person to person, station to station, and collect calls were common. And if your party was not available, when you called, the operator would call back at the time you asked her to. Additionally, the caller could leave a free message for the absent parties. Many times, college students would checking in with their parents would use that free message. We closed off rooms to heat our house better. Natural gas was not plentiful. Actually, nothing was plentiful in the years during and immediately following World War II. When the weather was particularly cold, And the forecast was for that to continue for a while. The schools would close, some industries and some businesses would close. That was to preserve fuel. It was rationed to our houses, and you couldn't crank up the temperature any higher than 60 degrees. Home heating furnaces were commonly turned off at bedtime and not turned back on until the morning. Additionally, windows were open for fresh air while sleeping, regardless of how cold it was. It was always fun to spend the night with a friend who had a floor furnace. We'd get up early in the morning with the house temperature about 40, and we'd stand over the full furnace with the air billowing up our blankets. I don't remember air conditioning anywhere except maybe the movie theaters until the mid-60s. But I well remember the architecture, electric fans and attic fans. All the girls, the little girls, carried hand fans. And I still got a nice variety of those. You could buy them at the 5 and dime for 5 cents a piece or up to $1. But they were all necessary to keep us from wilting and melting, and there was no breeze. The purpose of a cupola on top of the roof was to draw air in from the outside up through the rooftop, creating a pleasant breeze. When I was about 7, I remember setting up my own business on Quintard from my dad's Coke machine. He was surprised when I told him that I had made some money selling Cokes in the front yard. He said, I wondered why all my Cokes were gone. I remember the special times of being in the presence of many gifted pianists and dancers from the Birmingham Conservatory of Music, presented in Anniston through the Knox Music Club. There was a great place across town where Mom used to take us to buy comic books. We could buy and sell. And the seamstress made a lot of my clothes. I remember learning to drive in my dad's stick shift car. My father built the first veterinary hospital in Anniston. It was opened in 1912, my grandfather, in 1912. My father grew up there, and as he'd worked with my father since he was age 5. He later practiced with them after he graduated from Auburn Vet School. And when my grandfather died in 1944, my father became the only veterinarian in Anniston. He treated both large and small animals. His hospital was in our backyard on Quintard, in the little alley that ran between their house and Stewart Cleaners. The entry to the hospital was through that alley. Very often horses were hitched in the backyard, and sometimes pigs were treated. And one day a little boy brought a goldfish that was hiding on top of a bowl of water. He asked my dad if he could help the goldfish. Sure, come back this afternoon and we'll see what we can do. So Dad went to Woolworth's, bought a goldfish, and put it in the bowl. The little boy came back later, he was thrilled to see his well goldfish. Most of all, I remember the people with whom I grew up. Talented, gifted, funny, innovative, such awesome times we had together. Now I'll talk a little bit about the restaurants. And the one that seemed to be most often mentioned was the Sanitary Cafe. Corner of, it was next to the federal courthouse, then the post office. And the eating in there was a Greek cuisine, and the eating in there was a Sunday tradition with our family. Gus Nikopoulos was the owner. And Gus would come by our table and tell us the nightly specials. It was my favorite when he said, we got tenderloin trout, French fries, and miracle pie. It's just remarkable. And this particular writer says he and his wife had their first date there 55 years ago. One interesting story about Gus is that word about his death got out prematurely. He was known and loved by everybody in Anniston he lived on. Christine. And so the ladies of the town would bring casseroles to his house, sympathy for his family. And Gus opened the door. He later said, you know, there's nothing better than to have your death occur prematurely. Then you find out who your true friends really are. Gus's son, Nick, was a doctor who was Elvis's personal doctor. There was a lot of controversy about that. They thought that Nick had overprescribed drugs for Elvis. Fortunately, Gus had passed away and did not have to endure that, and I think ultimately Dick was exonerated from any issues in that. Next, it was the Young China Cafe on West 10th Street, and later on Quintard. It was a very mysterious Oriental restaurant. There were curtains in each booth, closing the diners in privacy. Ah, mysterious Orient. A further reason for privacy was that Charlie Lee would allow liquor to be drunk in his restaurant. One of my brothers-in-law was here. They had a group that would go there on Sunday night, and 6 or 8 of them would eat, and one of them's responsibility was to pay for the meal. And one night they went to pay Charlie Lee, and they said, "We're not paying for Mr. Smith over here because he didn't eat his food. He had passed out into his plate." Charlie Lee said, "I'm not charging him for eating it, I'm charging him for sleeping in it." Charlie Lee had a grandson named Jimmy Meggs Mock, who was named after Dr. Jimmy Meggs. Then there was Pop's Barbecue at 622 Layton Avenue rear in the alley. Pop's Barbecue was the best. For $1.25, you could get 2 barbecue sandwiches, French fries, a Coke, and a Hershey bar. It was all within walking distance. And the cook was named Carl. His face was always serious, his manner sort of dignified, and he may have been a World War II vet. The golden rule may rule the area today, but Pop's was the best at its time. One time Clay Slate, many of you remember Clay, was an FBI agent. He accidentally left his hat in there, and someone wrote 008 as a mock of James Bond. You'd go into the Pops, and they'd have all these coffee cups hanging in the ceiling. One of them would have your name on it. So you'd reach up there, get your coffee cup, walk it over, no charge. You'd fill it up with coffee, and that was yours. Then there was a hitching post, which was right over here at 10th and Quintard, between Quintard and Wilmer, next to the Lily Pure Ice Cream Company. Only about 3 of you are old enough to remember. The owner was Joe Calhoun, who also owned a grocery store on 17th Street. And his slogan was, "Where the elite meet." Nobody could confirm that or deny it. But then there was a Tip Top Creamery up on North Noble. On Sundays you could ride up there and get ice cream. The town was so clean and exciting to live in. Everyone came to town and got dressed up to go to town. I miss those days. Later, if you were under 21, you could go up there and get beer. Don't tell me. Kiro's Annistonian Restaurant, now across from the city offices up there, is part of Anniston's prosperous Jewish community. And their ultimately best foods were Wiener Schnitzel and blue cheese stuffed steak. Then let's not forget Elmer's, South Quintard. Great dancing, fried catfish, and had famous bands. Interestingly, there is a video of the Chaparrals, well, you're not old enough to remember the Chaparrals, playing one of their famous songs. I can give you the address, and I recommend it. Last, and I won't go through every restaurant, there was Vic's Cafe that was at 9th and Noble. There you could get meat, 2 vegetables, meat, milk, tea, or coffee for 15 cents, the blue plate special. And Vic was so young when he opened that restaurant that Mayor E.D. Banks had to co-sign the lease because he was not old enough to legally sign the lease. Interesting about want ads from the Anniston Star here, Vic was looking for an experienced waitress. They apply between 9 and 11. Good pay, short hours, good tips, meals and uniforms furnished. And right below that is wanted colored girls for the kitchen. Work with a chance to become a cook. Good pay, Vic's Cafe, apply in the rear between 9 and 11. I'm sorry, I will mention the Smokehouse. It was on Noble Street. The Smokehouse used to serve some of the best chili in town. They had a unique cigarette lighter. It was a massive thing. You'd go in there. I didn't smoke, but the people would go in there and they'd do it, and this big flame would come up, and you could stick your cigarette in there, and that was that. 40 cents, you could get a hot dog and a bowl of chili with crackers and a knee-high orange drink. In the early 50s, when we weren't old enough to go in there, some of the men would come out of the back door, they'd have their whiskey bottles with them, and they would tell us to get away, get away, get out of here. They also had a ticker tape machine and a blackboard where they would post ball scores. I'm sure there wasn't any wagering on ball scores. For some reason they posted baseball and football scores up there. And they would also post stock market prices. Courthouse Cafe, only the reason I say this, there are a few lawyers here. It hasn't changed a bit, I guess it's no longer here, but there you could listen to area lawyers gossip about politics and crime. Then there were the bakeries. There was Seal's Bakery next to the Calhoun Theater, and I'll try to tell you where the Calhoun was. Gardner's Cafeteria and Bakery on West 13th Street behind Rainwater Furniture. And the cost of lunch was 96 cents. E.C. Lloyd was the mayor. He owned Lloyd's Bakery, and he made Lloyd's bread. And on Saturday morning, if you were under age 10 or 12, if you had a Lloyd's bread wrapper, you could go to the Ritz Theater, and that was how you got into the theater. They would have cereals, Flash Gordon, Sky King, Tarzan, and others. If you didn't have the bread wrapper, it would cost you 11 cents to go in. Scott was quick to tell me in Oxford it was 10 cents because they didn't have an entertainment tax. Then they would burn the bread wrappers during the movie, and one time we were in there and all the smoke got in the theater and they thought the place was on fire, so we had to evacuate. Then there are the hotels. There was the Beavis Hotel, also on 9th and Noble. I'm told by one lady that happens to be sitting in here tonight that it had many purposes. I couldn't attest to that. It was a place to eat, especially Sunday after lunch. But perhaps had a few ladies in the evening, but no, she had no idea whether that was true or not. The Jeff Davis Hotel, which was on 13th and Noble, they would give you letterhead. This was back in the days, if you can believe it, when people actually wrote letters to each other. They would say Jeff Davis Hotel, Anniston, Alabama. The only 2 times I ever remember going to the Jeff Davis Hotel was once during the Christmas parade, and it was raining, cold. My parents were not going to sit out on the street, so they rented a room on the 2nd floor. We got to sit on the 2nd floor and look out the window at the Christmas parade. The other time I had a good friend named Dee Merrill. And Dee's family were involved in politics. Dee invited me to go down to meet Alvin Barkley. Alvin Barkley was the Vice President of the United States under Harry Truman. And all I remember about that night with Alvin Barkley and Dee Merrill was the smell of whiskey and cigarettes. And then, at that point, I lost my interest in politics forever. Then there was the Anniston Country Club and Isaiah's Sunday Night Prime Rib, probably the best food in town. Guy Potter remembers babysitting for me on Sunday night. And we would play chess. The guy said he finally had to quit when he got to be about 19 and I got to be about 13. They were wondering about us, so guys quit that. There was a man named Daddy Rex Godman. He lived on Glenwood Terrace. He was a really good tennis player, and he was, I think, the chief financial officer of one of the founders here. And he produced some really great tennis players from Anniston. He produced Guy Potter, Les Longshore, Scotty Watson, Ernest Potter, Doug Stewart, and Bill Mallory, all of whom at one time or another were ranked #1 in the state. We had some great golfers, Mickey Calhoun, Jack Vardaman, Chris Bannister, and Milton Wigley. Interestingly, Calhoun and Vardaman both got to play Jack Nicklaus in the NCAA championships. They both lost. Calhoun lost 5-4, and Vardaman had lost 2 years before, 1-up. Pretty good score against Jack Nicklaus. Calhoun told me, he said, well, I knew that Jack Nicklaus was going to be a great golfer because after our match was over, he goes to the driving range and I go to the bar. And several people in the 50s would go to the Anniston Country Club early in the morning to play golf. We would play with William Butler, who was the head of the caddies. He was a scratch golfer. Some of the most colorful were Polly Tillow Sanford, the group here that carries around Tillow's portrait because it's good luck. Do you have any problem? You pass get your pillow around to your friend to help him out of a bad situation. The other noticeables were Maintain, Harris, Roundhead, Weatherman. You tell Weatherman because he never took a bath. He always knew which way the wind was blowing. Then there was Junebug and Cheesecake. Going to the club to play golf was a true experience. It taught me a lot about golf, but it taught me more that skin color did make a difference. Clothing stores on Noble, everybody knew the customers when you walked in the door. There was Berman's. You had to go upstairs in Berman's in the middle of the store. Ms. Berman sat up there on a stool as you went in, and she checked you out and made sure you were okay. She was quite a Christian, aristocratic Jewish lady. She, interestingly, was a member of the French Resistance, and that's how Farley Berman got to meet her. And after the war, they got married and came back to Anniston. Then there was Gales. One of these ladies here used to work for Mr. Routman at Gales. And Annie Jo Harris worked there and lived next door to me. She always paid personal attention, not to me, but to this lady, of how my clothes fitted. The cottage shop was on Wilmer at about 12th Street, I think. And they were known for wrapping presents at Christmas and beautifully handmade children's clothes. Wakefield's, where I worked, had a Santa Claus up on the mezzanine. This was down on the building they just tore down. And that Santa had a very special talent. He also had a female elf assistant who would chat with the parents while you were up there in Santa's lap. She would write down what your mom said, and Santa would relay it back to you on a hidden microphone, and she was able to talk to him through his earpiece. So he knew your name and what you wanted for Christmas, just as you stepped in. Then there was Mr. Kyles, who worked there. When I was a salesman there, he was the head man in charge. And one day, Martin Wakefield would pick out the ugliest coat in the men's department, and he would pay you $5 per salesman if you could sell that coat. And I remember one day that the coat was a 42 extra short. I had that on the sleeve. And this guy came in and was looking for a coat. And he looks over there and he sees this coat. It's light gray with blue check marks on it. And he said, "I'd like that coat." And I said, "That's a 42 extra short." "Well, let me try it on anyway." So he tries on the coat, and sure enough, it barely gets below his elbows. And I said, "You can't take that coat." And he said, "Yeah, it'll show off my cufflinks." So I got $3 for selling the coat, and I got $25 for a bonus from all the other salespeople, $5 each, for selling that coat. Then there was Horace Beards. Beards was next door to the Sanitary Cafe. Horace would make you think you had gotten a great deal from him because he would give you a free tie. It was some tie he'd had in inventory 6 years. And moving on, there was J.C. Penney's, Globe, Mr. Friel, Hudson's, Kitchens, Mangles, Ullman's. All of those were great stores. And again, it was a very intimate shopping experience. Then there were 2 newsstands downtown. There was Wade's newsstand and Harris newsstand, and you could get 5 comic books for 50 cents. Then there were the drive-in theaters. The drive-in theaters. The Tavern up on Blue Mountain Road at Noble Street, they'd have a Santa Claus car hop at Christmas. It was like, I guess, Sonic today, where you drive up and they come take your order. And this is a girl talking. She says, "I remember as a little girl, my grandmother would press my dress and let me go out and eat with my daddy at the Tavern." Then there was Lee's Drive-In, which was up on North Quintard. And this friend says, my friend and I would go to Leeds every day, get icebox pie when we were home from school. And we just drive around and around and around. And then we drive down to Leeds, from Leeds to, having a senior moment here. Go Post, I guess. Anyway, another drive-in. And I personally remember, Susan will attest the fact that I'm rather bizarre the way I drink lemon on everything. One night I was at Lee's Drive-In, and this very proper young guy, a little older than I was, sat down, ordered a cup of hot tea. And he took out a lemon, and he stuck a fork in it, and he twisted the fork and squeezed the lemon. I thought, man, that's cool. Turns out that he was Sir Thomas Lipton's grandson. He was from London. What he was doing in Anniston, I don't know, but he taught me how to squeeze lemon in my tea, and I've done it ever since. Irby's Old Hickory Drive-In, that was another favorite of mine. You'd sit there and you'd see all your friends. One time I had a date with a girl named Dottie Staples. I hope she's not embarrassed to hear that, but I did. And it was pouring down rain, and so Dottie and I both ordered 2 Cokes and 2 lemon icebox pies. And the bellhop brings it out and puts it in my car. My mother had a car with electric windows. I had never seen electric windows before. So the car hop said, instead of putting this outside, it'll get ruined in the rain, just roll your window down a little bit and we'll put it in over you, between you and the steering wheel. I said, well, okay. So about that time, Carolyn Monk and her date pull up right next door to us. And Dottie says, oh, there's Carolyn Monk. I want to talk to her. She didn't know how to roll the window down. She said, roll the window down. So I reached over and rolled the window down. Well, I rolled down my window. Everything falls in my lap. Cokes, lemon icebox pie. Drugstores. We have anybody here who remembers anything about drugstores? Weigel's was the drugstore. Now this can get a little PG. Susan made me make it G. It started out as R. Ended up as PG. It was the greatest store, and it was the drugstore in town. They had great chocolates as well as toiletries. The photo fountain there had cherry Cokes and milkshakes. And just, this is one of our friends talking, just before we got married, many of our mothers took us to Weigel's to meet Flo, to have the talk. And Flo talked to us about birth control and feminine hygiene and all the stuff that Susan didn't want me to talk about. She said, but anyway, we all got the bulk of our marital information from Flo there at Weigel's. Everybody was pretty naive until that day. Then J.E. had dollar grab bags at the front door. You give them $1 and you go out there and you got to pick anything, but you couldn't tell what was in there or not. And visiting with J.E. was the ultimate pleasure downtown. You could go in there, he knew everybody, he could tell you stories, he would keep you entertained and laugh. Then Scarborough's Drug was here. Dr. Elrod, who was one of the first dentists in town, would give the children a gift certificate for a small ice cream cone. He was just doing that to encourage new business. The doctors were here. I remember when Dr. Luther came, Gertrude Luther, the first female and the first pediatrician in town. And her office was a little white house over here by what used to be Johnston Junior High, Tyler Center now. I think Carla Thomas was there for a while. And it was great to have a female doctor and a female. She would flat tell you. Susan can tell you some stories about Gertrude Luther explaining things to you when you go in there. She didn't explain it to Susan, but she explained to some of her other patients' mothers. Then there was Dr. Meggs, Dr. Maherg, Dr. Adams, who took my tonsils out and brought them to me in a little jar. I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, but I knew then I was not interested. Dr. Donald, the Caffeys, Doc and Buddy, Dr. Gibbons, Dr. Brennan, Tom King, Dr. Levi. Any of you remember Dr. Levi? He was the first radiologist in town. He had no fingers because the x-rays would burn his fingers off. Then there was Dr. Crabtree came and joined Dr. Taylor as the orthopedic surgeon. The hospitals here, there were actually more than you'd know, but Garner Hospital, where I was born, it's now a nursing home, I think, on Layton. Anniston Memorial, which is now where Northeast Alabama is, and Susie Stringfellow was still at the time a tuberculosis sanatorium. Then there were the filling stations, 101 filling station at 10th and Gurnee. Mr. Triplett was there. He had a son that was my age, and an older son, Bill Triplett. And you'd go down there, and he had Mr. Denman, who worked there, and he wore a black leather bow tie. And he would clean your windshield, and he would fill up the gas. There was no such thing as a credit card. You just pay in cash. That was long before I was able to drive. Then on South Noble, there was the Spur station down there by the giant chair on Noble Street. They would give you a Spur courtesy card. I've lost mine, but I frequently ask people, they say, "Have you got a credit card?" And I said, "Well, I've got a Spur courtesy card." But I don't know what they did with it either, but the San Ann station was on 16th and Noble. It had S&H green stamps. There was more and more stations. Then there was the Jitney Jungle, going to the grocery stores now. And one of my friends, in 1943, they had a contest for coloring pages in their coloring book. And they would put their products in there, like a can of baked beans. And she won the contest. She won a beautiful bicycle. We had a friend named Watson Moore, whose father ran that Jitney Jungle, and he got bitten by a tarantula when he was unloading some bananas off the truck there, and ultimately died. That was my first experience of losing a friend's parents. Then at A&P, you could pick out your coffee, and you could grind it, get 8 o'clock coffee, and boy, it smelled good. I don't know how it tasted, but it really smelled good. Then there was Richardson's on West End, and they had a driver. They would deliver to your house, and James Littlejohn was his name, and he would deliver groceries, and he'd put them in your refrigerator if you weren't home. Everybody left their doors unlocked. They had a refrigerator that was accessible. James would even go by the whiskey store and pick up a little something for you if you wanted it. And when I was growing up, James would let me, he'd stop by my house, one of the first stops, and I could get in the back of his truck, no seat belt, no crash helmet. We just sit in the back of the truck. He would drive around to 4 or 5 other stops, drop his groceries off, bring me back, and drop me off at my mother's house. What a great experience that was. You could walk into the store. The people would know what meat you wanted. You cut it for you and just wrap it in meat. It didn't come pre-packaged or anything. It just, okay, Ms. Acker, you want this thing, and here it is. You could get blocks of ice at the Anniston Ice Company up on, I guess that's about 15th Street, West 15th Street. And the Eggman and the Iceman would come and put eggs in your refrigerator, put ice block in your refrigerator. Then there were the churches. There was Parker Memorial. I was a Methodist. Parker Memorial, there you had to get saved. Not all, but a number of the good-looking girls would go there. Scott and some of us would go there for a revival, and one guy looked over me and says, they had the call to go down front. He said, "You better go down front because these Ayers girls are not going to pay any attention to you if you don't do it." We got saved. I don't think I was ever formally baptized there. I was baptized at the First Methodist Church by Dr. Henry back in the early 40s. I guess I was. So he used water from the River Jordan. How he got to the River Jordan, I do not know. And my daddy was always afraid of me catching something from that water from the River Jordan. He said, when you grow up, you probably won't have any hair on the top of your head. I guess that's, part of the reason. And then we would sing in Sunday school, "Mary's had a birthday, we're so glad to see." I mean, and she would drop pennies, and you'd count the pennies, and then you knew exactly how old Mary was. Grace Episcopal Church, where my friends went, we'd go down there at Christmas. The Methodists didn't know much about the Episcopal rites, but you had to kneel, and that created a little consternation. Some of us Methodists had never done that before. And fortunately, we didn't get kicked out of the church. My friend Mickey Calhoun and I, the Methodist sanctuary that was replaced in 1954 was kind of bowl shaped. It was round and it sloped down to the pulpit. And Mickey and I were sitting on the back row, and we got in a fight over a bag of marbles in a little net bag. And they get ripped open and they all roll over. Dr. Henry says, will those two boys please come down after the service and pick up your marbles? So Vicki and I ended up there. And there was Blue Mountain School. Miss Bates taught the 4th grade there, and you didn't get out of her class until you learned the multiplication table. And she used to play the piano, and she would have a group of students from Noble Street School, and they would go to WHMA radio, Harry Mill airs, and they wore hats that were made out of coffee cans that had contact paper wrapped around them. So they would wear those hats and play the music. She later played the chimes at St. Michael's. She never married. A lot of the teachers didn't. All the teachers now, that were teachers then, they would all be accountants and CPAs and doctors today. Back then they were teachers and they took care of us. Noble Street School, we had some people there who achieved some truly remarkable success. Woodstock School, where I went, the lower floor was the cafeteria and the auditorium. Then the grades 1 through 3 were on the first floor, and 4, 5, and 6 were on the second floor. They used to have a janitor there named Eugene, and you could tell when there was some problem in the school because you would hear Miss Thompson on the loudspeaker. Eugene, please report to Miss Sharp's class. That meant somebody had thrown up in the class. He had this sawdust stuff that was just horrible. And he would dump it out on the floor and he'd mix it around and dump it out the lid. And that room smelled like that sawdust, I mean, all day long. Then there was Miss Sharp and Miss Hatcher. They both taught cursive writing. I don't think people even do cursive writing anymore. Ms. Sharp had one that was square at the top. Ms. Hatcher had one that was rounded at the top. And you could tell, still tell to this day, who had Ms. Sharp and who had Ms. Hatcher by virtue of how they make their arms. I remember that was one of my first experiences with dealing. I'd been in school with these people and I'd never known the difference. There was a little boy in my class, and he was absent one day, and our teacher called us together, and she said, "Now I want you to notice something about Joe." It says, his clothes are different from yours. His shirt buttons to the opposite side, and he's got puffs in his sleeves. He was wearing little girls' clothes because they could not afford regular clothes. And that just really made quite an impression on me in 3rd grade. Well, it was also, I got 2 minutes left, and I'm going to tell you, Mal Street and I were on the safety patrol at Woodstock School and the fire patrol. And Henry Smith, I think he's here tonight somewhere, he was the crossing guard at the corner of 10th and Keith. And the first day I got to walk to school in the 2nd grade, my mother said, "All right, you're in 2nd grade now, you walk to school." I go down there, and Henry's got this flag or something that kept, stop the cars. And Henry and I were next door neighbors, so he knew me, and he said, "If you cross that street, I'm going to beat you up." I go crying back home. "What are you doing here?" Well, Henry Smith said he was going to beat me. Well, that's crazy, so she tried to take it. Cobb High School was here. Cobb High School, of course, was the black high school. And they would play their football games on Wednesday night at Anniston Memorial Stadium. And you could go in there and watch the games, and you would not get bothered. But there were people who really had fun at those games. Really, frankly, more spirit at the Cobb High School football games than there were at the Anniston High School football games. They had their own freewheeling culture, and I wish I'd had more empathy for them and understanding them back then. Finally, I'll finish up, since my time is up, with Anniston High School. I got lots more to go, but that's all I need to do. Anniston High School was a remarkable place. A lot of us were sent away to school, I probably by a district judge, I don't know, Scott Andrews, because he was something wrong with him. So we didn't go to Anniston High School, but they would let you come back to their grand reunions. And it was always interesting to me to see they welcomed you back, even though you really weren't one of the groups. In the class of 1961, now listen to this number, there were 6 students in Anniston High School class, which is 1961. We graduated and went to Georgia Tech. They all 6 got out in 4 years, graduated. That's unheard of today. You know, 1/3, 2/3 of the students that go to Georgia Tech then and today, except Tommy Roberts, Bill Robinson, a few others, but the rest of them could not get out of that school, and a lot of them just flunked out. But for Anniston High that's in the 6th there, have them all accepted and get out in 4 years. It's truly remarkable. So my time is up. I'm going to kiss you all goodbye and thank you. And if you get bored to tears, you can come by my house late some night when Susan's trying to go to sleep, and I'll
Thank you very much, Bill. We appreciate that. I have to admit, I've been around here a long time, but not long enough to remember much of that.
Bob,
my age, you can't remember yesterday.
can I tell one story about growing up in Anniston? And I think everybody sitting in this room knows the person I was talking about is my uncle, my great uncle, Frank Jones, who was an antique dealer. He also ran the little dance school upstairs right next door to this building. And every year he was one of the town characters, and he had his little recital of his little ballet little girls, and I had all these little girls about this big in their little tutus and down there, and they'd give their recital at the Ritz Theater. And one night, right in the middle of the recital, one of the women just came up wringing her hands. All these this was backstage, and wringing her hands, said, Mr. Jones, my little girl forgot her underwear. And he, without batting an eye, said, take the pants off that child and put it on that child.